up, everybody? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. Today we're doing something a little different. You may remember this car from a previous video. I'll put a link right up here. This is the 1993 Cadillac Deville that we scooped up from my father-in-law about a month ago. And it's finally time to pull the engine out of this thing. The engine and transmission is all he wants. I actually don't even think he wants the transmission, just the engine. But I'm gonna get this yanked out so I can take it with us and deliver it to him next time we go visit. Let me show you how to do this thing. So to start out on this, start out like you would any other engine pull, engine removal, anything like that. Get the hood out of your way. It's just gonna cause headaches. Just get it off, get it out of your way. Get the antifreeze drained out of it. If you like to, you can get the oil drained out as well. But get those fluids drained out. If it has air conditioning, make sure you get the air conditioning refrigerant recovered and disposed of properly, because you're going to have to undo all of those things in order to get the engine out of this thing. Once you have all those fluids draining, you can start getting your extraneous components removed. The intake piping with the air filter, you can get that out of your way. You can remove the upper radiator hose. You can start removing heater hoses and things like that. So I've got a good start on it. I'm going to keep going, get the rest of those top parts, hoses, plumbing, piping, those sort of things moved out of my way and off the engine. Okay, I'm going to bring you in a little closer here for some of these other little detailed pieces. So we need to get the transmission linkage disconnected from the transmission. This is it right here, runs down to the little transmission shifter. So these are held in place with a little U-shaped piece of metal. You pry that piece of metal up out of there, and then you see those two little ears, this little ear right here and this little tab right here. You squeeze those together and this whole piece will slide that direction out. And then this part, it's basically just a ball and socket joint. You just pull straight up on it and that ball should come loose. You may need to pry it with a screwdriver, but it should pop up off of that ball. So the way I like to work is get everything disconnected on that side. So electrical, plumbing, hoses, everything except motor mounts, essentially. I'll get undone from the driver's side, and then I'll undo it on the passenger side. Got all the hoses and stuff undone on this side. The next thing I need to do is get my wiring disconnected. So a really simple tip to keep track of where your wiring goes, especially if you haven't pulled one of these engines before, just get yourself some masking tape and a Sharpie marker or a pen, and just label the wires as you remove them and unplug them from things. I just unhooked this one here. This is the battery positive feed to the distributor. So I'll just label it battery positive to distributor. That way it'll make it easy to get it connected up to where it needs to be connected when my father-in-law swaps this into his Fiero. All right, boys and girls, well, we're moving right through this thing. I've got pretty much everything disconnected over here on the driver's side of the engine. Just to recap, in case you're doing this yourself, I had to undo the transmission shifter linkage, the battery positive power feed to the distributor. There's a wire harness that comes up and connects right in here to the body harness. I disconnected those and labeled them. There's 5 or 6 vacuum lines that run various things, the vacuum chamber, some of the temperature controls, the brake booster, and a few other odds and ends. I took the oil cooler fittings off from the radiator and just tucked them up right in here. We took the air filter box out of the way, and then I took the ABS pump, I unbolted it from the frame and pulled that up out of the way to give myself more room to work over here. So I think before I go any further, I'm gonna remove this brake master cylinder also, and then I'll have everything disconnected, undone, and moved here on the driver's side, except for the motor mounts. And that's gonna be more or less all I do until I get the passenger side all disconnected as well. Okay, so moving right along over here on the passenger side. So I've got my one AC line pulled up out of the way. I got my battery cables disconnected, moved over. There with the engine. The lower radiator hose, I'm gonna have to try to cut from underneath. I can't really get onto the clamps or anything from up above where I am now. I got the other AC line of the compressor disconnected as well. There's nothing really in this area. Now over here is one of the lift points for the engine. Right here in front of it was the cruise control module controller. So I took that off and moved it out of the way so I don't crush it while I'm trying to lift this engine up and out. I need to undo the fuel lines right here. They're just push connectors. Those should be pretty easy to get undone. And then I need to get the main wire harness disconnected. It goes through the firewall right over here. There'll be a whole bunch of like this tapey plumber's dope type stuff that they put over it to seal it up. So you got to scrape all that stuff out of your way so you can actually get to the connector itself. And then it's held onto the firewall with a couple 7mm bolts here. You get those bolts off, and then you should be able to access the PCM itself from inside to undo the connectors from the PCM and bring them out through this hole. Okay, so we've got everything undone, disconnected over here on the passenger side, except for the wiring. We need to get inside and get the wires disconnected from the PCM and get the PCM out. So the PCM is buried back in here behind the dash. So I'm gonna try first to see if I can't get to it through the glove compartment here, but I suspect I'm gonna need to remove this lower panel in order to get back there and try to get it out. Okay, I want to show you guys the PCM. I finally got it out. It's tricky. So this right here, very similar size box. This is actually the body control module. It's got two connectors. They're both purple, okay? This right here is actually the PCM, the powertrain control module. It has three connectors that go into it, black and green. This is actually tucked way back behind another module and the little relay box, and it takes a little bit of work to get this out, but this is what you need to run the engine. An easy way to be sure that you don't grab the wrong module is just follow the wire harness. The wire harness for the engine goes and connects directly to this PCM. If you only want the engine and transmission, all you need is the powertrain control module. Make sure you get the right box. Okay, so we've got our wire harness to the computer out. We've got our PCM out. We've got everything else disconnected from the car. So the only thing holding the engine into the car at this point is the motor mount, the axle shafts, and the transmission cooler lines. And all of those I'm gonna remove from underneath. Before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and get the radiator out because it's gonna give me a little bit more room to move the engine. My plan to get it out is actually to lift it up and forward, so I can give myself another 5-6 inches of space by pulling the radiator and the electric fans out of the way. So that's what I'm going to work on next. Well, we've got everything on the top of the engine disconnected, ready to come out. Everything's undone on the driver's side. Everything undone on the passenger side. You can see how much tighter to the unibody framework it is on this side. So that's a lot of the reason why I took all of the cooling out of it, the radiator and the AC condenser. So it's going to give me space to take the engine, lift it off the motor mounts, and then come diagonally this way just a little bit and then lift it straight up and out. Hopefully, that's the way it goes in my head, but we'll see if it actually goes that way in real life. So the only things I have left to get disconnected is the exhaust, the axle shafts, and the motor mount. And then I'm pretty sure it'll be just sitting there and I'll be able to just lift it up and out of the car. I hope. That's the plan. All right, it's the next day. We left off yesterday. We have everything disconnected on the top side of the engine. So now I need to jack the car up. I need to get the axle shafts disconnected. And then I need to get the motor mounts undone. I'm also going to cut the exhaust off, and then I should be able to lift this thing up and out of the car. It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to see anything I'm doing underneath of there, so I'll just bring you back when I get that stuff done. All right, after I crawled underneath and took a look at this thing, it's so tight around the axle shafts in this vehicle. It's going to be easier and less frustrating for me to just pull the axle shafts out like you would if you were going to be replacing them. So I'm just going to do that. If you never removed an axle shaft on a front wheel drive vehicle like this before, usually you just have to undo either the upper or lower ball joints, or in this case the upper strut bolts, tip the whole steering hub out, loosen the axle nut, knock the axle loose from the hub, and then pop the axle out of the transmission. It's really not difficult. Sometimes the axles can get stuck, but usually that's the most trouble you'll have. So I'm just going to pop the axle shafts out of this thing as if I were going to be replacing them. Okay, so I'm going to try to show you guys where I'm at under here. I've got the axle shafts removed on both sides. I put the exhaust off as high up as I could. And the only thing left holding this engine in the car is the motor mounts. So as far as I can see and tell, there are 4 mounts. One here, one here, it's on the other side of this cross member. One on top of this cross member right up here, and then one more back here. And they are bolted to the frame with a bunch of 15mm nuts. So I'm going to get all those nuts loosened, double and triple check to make sure that I don't miss any, and then I'm going to lower the car back down onto the ground and try to lift the engine up and out of it. From the looks of it, it should just sit in place once I loosen these motor mount bolts, and then I'll be able to get my chain hooked up on top and hopefully just lift it up out of the engine bay. So, it's probably not going to be that easy, but I'm going to stay optimistic. Okay, I think this engine is ready to be lifted up and out of the engine compartment. I'm going to roll it back a little bit to give myself a little more room to move around, and then we're going to try to get this thing out of here. There we go, that should be good. All right, let's lift up and see what happens. See what I forgot to unhook. Okay, we're sticking back here on the driver's side a little bit. Oh, I think we're loose. I think we just need to start getting it pulled towards the front. Yeah, like that. Oh, here, we got to get these power steering lines undone. I don't know if these lines were going to work for you or not. Bob, but I'm at the point now that I'm not going back under the car, so I gotta cut them. Sorry. Oh yeah, she's coming out. Come on out of there, you big ugly pile of iron. Okay, up to Daisy. Zam! There we go, she's out of there. All right, that wasn't so bad. All right, I'm gonna roll the car back out of the way because this thing's getting loaded on the trailer and taken for scrap on Monday. We don't need anything else out of it. All right, everybody, well, that's it for this video. We've got this 4.9 Cadillac engine and transmission pulled right out of the car. This is exactly how I'm going to deliver it to my father-in-law in a couple of weeks. I'll probably help him take the transmission and stuff off while we're there. We're gonna be visiting for a few days. Hopefully you found this helpful. I haven't seen anybody else show the ins and outs of pulling this thing, so I tried to show as much as I could. And hopefully this is helpful for you, and even just as a general guide, removing any engine from a vehicle, but specifically this Cadillac Deville with the 4.9 V8. You know, not too bad. Pretty par for the course when it comes to pulling engines. Thank you again for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. I appreciate every one of you that have subscribed, and if you haven't already, I sure would appreciate it if you did. And until the next video, take care.